So we are just a little bit past 2:30, so I want to go ahead and get the ball rolling. I'm Victoria Hicks. I'm going to be moderating today. I'm a senior at College of Charleston, majoring in communication, obviously, and I'm a Spanish minor. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us today for the National Advisory Council session. Today, we're going to be talking about what's next post-COVID vaccination. And so today we have 4 panelists who are going to be speaking with us. So we're so grateful to have them. First, we're going to have Ms. Linda Rutherford, who is the Senior Vice President and Chief Communication Officer at Southwest Airlines. And then Mr. Bruce Haynes, who is Managing Director and Chairman of Public Affairs at SARD Verbinia. I'm so sorry. I tried my best to get that right.
Verbinnen, you got it.
Verbinnen. Okay, thank you. And then there's Mike Newmeyer, who is co-founder and CEO of a PR agency. It's Archetty Group. And then Mr. David Campbell, who's president and COO of Chernoff Newman Advertising and PR Agency. So we're so grateful to have you guys. And so we're just going to dive right in. So what are you guys' views on the current state of how the vaccine is rolling out and what that means for your businesses, the industries that you all work in, as far as getting back into normal or whatever normal is?
Well, I'll start off and just talk about from our standpoint. Right now, we've got some healthcare clients and education clients. And so right now for us, it's about rolling out vaccine education and getting people to participate in it. And some of the interesting things we've seen is from our research is that in more rural areas, there's a lot more reluctance. And in some of the African-American communities, there's more reluctance to take the vaccine right now. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the messaging is going to be important on the safety of it and the importance of everyone doing that. And also the other part of it is, even though the vaccines are going out, is for people to still take other precautions about, safety measures, social distancing, mask, what have you, that just because you've been vaccinated doesn't mean everybody's out of the woods yet.
Mm-hmm. Great answer. Thanks for starting us off, Mr. Campbell.
I would just offer
I'll
that.
unmute and chime in. Oh, sorry, Linda.
No, so I was just saying, I was going to chime in as well and just say that we're doing some, very similar things. We're talking about the importance of continuing to wear a mask, continuing to, wash hands frequently, use hand sanitizer, do the responsible things that we've all been taught for the last year, and then piling on top of that the vaccine education to try and address resources. We've created an online resource center for our employees, because obviously we've got employees in a number of different states to know, what their state government is recommending in terms of where they're prioritized, where they can access vaccines, the kinds of lists that they can get listed on. And so really heavy into the awareness and the education piece of the communication effort. We've opted at this point not to require the vaccine of our employees, though we have we sort of left it open that if we felt like we needed to go there, we would. As a member of the travel industry, obviously for airlines, it's important to us to get to herd immunity, to get many people vaccinated so that there's just a comfort level of being able to get on an airplane and go places again.
Yeah, of course. That was a great answer as well. Thank you, Ms. Rutherford. And Mr. Haynes, I think you were also trying to chime in. Do you want to go next?
Sure. We're like David, we have a lot of clients and we're an agency side. So, there's a lot of scenario planning right now because not everyone really understands what return to work or return to office, the abbreviations that clients throw around, RTW, RTO. Are really going to look like because of, the vagueness around some of the vaccine availability in their area, whether there's going to be another spike. So, we're looking at templates for clear communication of company policies that will be able to answer questions am I required to wear a mask? Am I required to distance? Are we going to be, how many people are allowed in the office or in a workplace at one time? And one of the things that I would add that's important is there are real fears out there amongst employees and a lot of companies about returning to work, about being on public transportation with a wide variety of people that take the precautions in the different ways. There are fears about being in the office and elevator banks and those kinds of things, and anticipating what those questions are, those challenges are, and trying to address them in an open and transparent way. And the biggest question is when. And some people are already back. Some people don't know. Some people have set dates. So we're working through all of those challenges with clients. And again, trying to do it in a way that keeps the channels open, keeps things transparent, and gives employees as much certainty as possible and allays fears where we can.
That is such a wonderful answer. I'm really glad that you brought up the transparency piece, and really addressing and validating people's fears, but also, having a business mindset. That was a great answer. And then Mr. Newmeyer, do you want to have anything to add on that?
I think the brilliance has been shared already so far, outsurpasses anything I can scrape off the ground. So I'll just let it stand at that.
Okay. So I guess I can start off this question period, and then anybody who has questions can just add them into the chat. So in getting back to normal, I know that it looks different for everybody, and that everybody wants their employees to really be comfortable with the decisions that they're making. So what are some of the things that kind of go through you all's minds as the decision makers in choosing when is the right time to go back?
So I'll go first since I jetted out of the last one. I think that's an interesting question. I remember in the probably in the summer having a conversation with a client and them asking when we're going to go back to work, not back to work, but back to our office, which is brand new because we thought investing in a new office in the middle of the pandemic was the best thing to do. So at least we know it's clean. But that was a little funny. I mean, come on, Bruce. Thank you, Linda. So I remarked to her that, well, I thought we would wait until our clients were going back to the office, because I didn't want the optics to be bad and I wanted to be responsible. And she pointed out, she works for Cox Communications. I think they have, roughly 5,000 people at their corporate campus, and we have 23. And she said, Mike, it wouldn't look bad to me at all. Like, you have infinitely different issues than we have. So don't worry about waiting until we go back, because at this point they're talking 2021. So I think company size definitely comes into play. And then I think somebody mentioned it, and as communicators, we have to constantly remember, taking a pulse, a survey of the comfort level of employees is certainly something to consider. However, I do think once we have widespread available vaccines where anyone can walk in a Walmart, a CVS, a Kroger, a Publix, and get a shot in the arm, I think that starts to change the conversation to say, hey, we are ready to get back to a sense of normalcy some point after that. Yeah. As a smaller business.
That makes
Linda's
sense.
got different things. She's, got people traveling all over the world with lots of different people in big tubes.
Yeah, I was actually going to go to Ms. Rutherford next, because I thought that was such a great contrast, just to show both ends of the spectrum. So Mrs. Rutherford, how is that for a company that is so massive that never fully shut down during the pandemic? What kind of decisions are you guys making, and how are you all interacting with the employees as stakeholders about the right time to kind of implement more restrictions or to ease up on restrictions?
One of the things we've had to be very sensitive to is that we're an operational company. So we still have employees who go to the airport. We still have employees who get on airplanes and fly airplanes and take care of the passengers, safety in the cabin. So this really is about the support functions in our headquarters and our training facilities. And we've tried to be very sensitive to that, because when you talk about, remote work or being sensitive to people's needs, we ask our flight attendants to go out and get on airplanes every single day. So we've had to really be, careful in what that communication looks like. This is really what we're calling more the return to campus plan. So we've been under a code yellow, which is basically, except for essential personnel, there's remote work. And then when we lift that, which we're going to do on May 1st, we'll begin to bring employees back to the corporate campus in phases, but in concert with a new workplace flexibility plan that is really allowing leaders to work with the employees in their department about what the future of work looks like based on their role. So in other words, what kind of hybrid arrangement do they want to have where they can do remote work, they can be in the office. So we, on a pre-COVID, any given day, we'd have 8,500 people scattered in the various buildings on our corporate campus. We'll never have to build another building again to support headquarters and support and training functions. And we don't anticipate that those buildings will be full in the future based on the fact that we'll be able to offer these hybrid work solutions for people. Remains to be seen what the take rate will be, but we're putting purposeful governors on it so that we don't overload any of the buildings or facilities in the very beginning, obviously while people are still trying to get the vaccine.
That is so wonderful that you guys are really listening and being adaptable. So I really commend you guys for doing that. And I think we have some questions that just came in. So I'll pose this to either Mr. Campbell or Mr. Newmeyer. So do you all think that we'll ever really return to normal?
I mean, I don't, we won't return to the way we were March 13th, 2020. There'll be a new normal in that, we've taken advantage of technology. We've learned how to work remotely. We've looked at different ways to communicate. We've found ourselves be more nimble and agile. Our clients have come to us for help to say, okay, it's got to be done faster in this way and what have you. And so we've learned how to adapt to that. So I don't think we're going to go back to old ways. I mean, we picked up some better habits than we had before, or learned some new things, and we're going to take advantage of that. Some of the things that we missed so much, collaboration, and all that, we're going to try to maintain and go back and take care of all that. But there's never going to be an old normal again.
Mr. Haynes, do you have anything to add for that?
Yeah, I think that I don't disagree with David, but I think in some sectors, when you look at some types of businesses that are largely white collar and office oriented, then major law firms, global PR firms such as ours, I think there might be a little bit more of a gravitational pull to try to get back to the old ways. I think because, some of the things that are challenging in remote work, such as that collaborative effort, if you provide a very team-based solution, that can be difficult. If you, but on the other hand, one of the things that we've seen, global firm, right? So we've had to manage the closures 3 times now of the Hong Kong office by government authorities. London is locked down right now, whereas we could, theoretically return to a lot of our offices in the United States. We've learned to work more collaboratively across the different offices. And I think that's been a strength because we've seen so much of, my colleagues in London now and my colleagues in Hong Kong and my colleagues in the California offices. So, I think there'll be some trade-offs, but I think we've gained more strength than we've lost in this episode. But I do think particularly if your business model is the billable hour and you're sort of used to having people in an office meeting with each other, there's going to be some gravitational pull. But I think David is right that I don't think we're ever going to completely return to that.
Well, I'll give you the full Likert scale model. So I'm probably on the other end. I think it will return to normal. I think that as humans, we are really resilient and we have really short memories. Even after we've gone through something like this, I think it's quite possible that, 24 months from now, there will be mosh pits and concerts, and there will be people going into offices. And I admit I haven't gone back in the literature and done a review to see what the snapback was from the Spanish flu besides the Roaring '20s. I think we very, very much will go back. Doesn't mean we won't incorporate some cool new tools that are more receptive and have more flexibility in working, type of thing. But as Bruce said, I think once an office starts to reach a tipping point, a white collar office starts to reach a tipping point of, more than 50% are in the office, like that natural fear of missing out mindset will go in. And to some extent, whether it's good or bad, if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. And in the working world, that's not always a great thing. I mean, before the pandemic, I think 3% of white collar workers were fully remote. Now, those 3% are really unhappy because, the other 97% ruined it for them. Like, I know people that have been working remote for 20 years and they never had to turn their camera on. They never had to put on a collared shirt or blouse or jacket. They never had to do their hair. Now they got to do all that stuff. And they're like, you people ruined it for me. So I think we will have a pretty severe, I think we'll get back in it. We're resilient creatures. Although I think it's going to take us a while to feel comfortable walking down the sidewalk, and when someone walks toward us, not feel like we have to, move 20 yards away from them. And I'm looking forward to that feeling because we're social creatures.
Yeah, the only reason that I don't go 100% in that direction, Mike, is this is something we've talked about as a firm. If David and I are recruiting Victoria, and David's got this nice, flexible 3-day-a-week remote policy that is viewed as more modern and contemporary and in keeping with the way things go. And we tell everybody we believe in this collaborative team effort, and that requires you to be in the office 9 to 6, Monday through Friday. Well, as we start to lose the Victorias of the world to David because she prefers working that way, and we see a talent drain in our agencies and companies, I think that's where the pendulum sort of starts to swing back, and we may have no choice other than to embrace this new normal. Because I think we're seeing that particularly younger people and people we're recruiting, they're asking questions about that already.
We're seeing the same thing with especially a lot of parents who have gotten used to picking up their kids at 2:00 in the afternoon, or certain rituals that they've kind of gone back to they'll see coming back to the office on a full-time basis as a penalty as opposed to a perk.
Yeah, I think flexibility is going to be key there. I think from a business owner standpoint, or from a business standpoint, what's going to be a very interesting question, and the technology firms have started grappling with it already. There was a scramble for now you can hire the best talent no matter where it is. But then you start putting it through the lens of, if I'm Facebook and I'm paying really great talent out in San Jose at the San Jose price range, and then that talent picks up and decides to move to Montana, what happens, right? And interesting firms, large tech firms that have talked about we're going to be remote forever, have started to come out with different plans of what happens if you move out of the city in which your salary was based. And in some cases, it's going to be, you're going to take a cost of living adjustment down. Everyone would love to get paid San Francisco wages and live in North Dakota. Well, maybe not everyone, but you know what I mean, type of thing. So that's going to be an interesting thing also.
Yeah,
How
pros
do
and
you do
cons. I mean, one
pay?
of the things from a recruiting standpoint is if we have a work from anywhere policy, we think that that opens up the talent pool, right? Because we don't have to worry about relocating people to where we need them because they can live anywhere. So that's quality of life for
Mhm.
them. The downside is if we want talent who happens to be in a state that has certain tax or labor laws that are disadvantageous to the company. So it's
Yeah,
gonna get complicated. But I
yeah.
definitely think a hybrid option is going to be part of the mix. I think that the future workforce is going to, well, the current and future workforce is going to demand it in some way.
Do want to jump in here a little bit, and because I'm so glad that we got to bring up the recruiting, because a lot of people in here are going to graduate soon. I'm one of them, and so what is the state of recruiting right now in a pandemic where things are starting to get more normal, but they're still kind of up in the air?
I'll just speak from the airline. I think it depends on where you want to go to work, because there are industries that have been in distress during the pandemic, and then there's industries that have flourished during the pandemic. So it really depends where you want to work. I mean, speaking from the airline, we stopped hiring in March, and then we did an early retirement program where we had several thousand employees take early buyout packages. We have several thousand more employees who are on extended leaves that we offered them because we don't need them right now because our flight schedule is smaller than it was pre-COVID. So we're not doing a lot of recruiting right now. We're starting to have a few positions where through attrition we've had some critical backfills that we need to we need to replace the talent, but we are not an industry that's doing widespread hiring right now. So I think you have to look around at those industries that have been in growth mode even during the pandemic. I do think there'll be a bit of a hockey stick as we see these businesses in distress begin to recover. There's going to be a quick fight for talent. And so I think it's going to be interesting as we get into the back half of the year.
Yeah, we actually had a good year last year, but because of the uncertainty, we put any hiring on hold until late fall, until we, realized that the growth we had was real. But it's been interesting because it's seen, early on as people were graduating from 2020, I mean, the people were out the woodwork saying, oh my gosh, everything's changed. We got to find jobs, offers being pulled, what have you. And then when we started going back to the market to talk to people, we just found there were a lot of people that around there that were kicking tires, and a lot of people that were applying for jobs and doing things that may not have really been looking to leave. Either they were trying to negotiate where they were or something. And so we just went through a lot of stuff where we were churning through people that, we would get close to making an offer and then they would drop out or things like that. So it was actually kind of almost harder to recruit, but we were recruiting for very specific areas. And to, kind of get those closed took longer than expected.
Does anyone else want to throw their hat in the ring on that one?
I can just say from our agency standpoint, the timeline is longer because it used to be that you could come up to Washington, you could sit down and we could talk, and that one-on-one interaction or with the group in my office, it's just sort of very easy to get a real sense, and then I could let you get on the train and you go to New York and meet with people at headquarters, and it was all very easy. Doing that all remotely is a little bit of a challenge. And I think the other thing that David referenced and Linda to some extent is the hesitancy that a lot of firms have had. We had our second best year last year in the history of the company. But at the same time, we actually did some crazy things. We started a new practice and made a strategic acquisition. So from a business standpoint, we didn't put it on hold, but we have been very, very careful about hiring. And we have been really thoughtful about hiring to make sure that it supports the work that we have, as opposed to, we took more of a strategic, we went out on a limb in terms of buying something in another country where we knew we always wanted to be, and opening a practice that was a natural extension of something that's a core practice, which was always a strategic. So these were things that we really had planned out before the pandemic. But in terms of just hiring to fill open positions, we've actually taken a step back from that and been a little more reticent, to the point that David was making about the uncertainty.
And I think we only have time for one more question, and it's going to have to be a little quick because we're running out of time. But I would say, what is one thing that you all think that graduates who are, coming out and going into the workforce and hoping to get a job in PR, like, what's one thing that you think that we all need to keep on our radar?
I would say my advice is always put yourself in the perspective of the person hiring, and how are you going to make their life easier? People hire to help solve problems and to make their, take care of problems they have. And so just look at it from that way, instead of sort of the, well, what can you do for me? Position yourself as what I can do for you.
Just
That's a
really
great
quickly, because I know we're running out of time. I think a lot of people want to approach the interview in terms of telling me how much they can do. And I'm interested in learning how you work on a team and how you contribute to the teams that you work on and in the communities you work in. There are a lot of things that you can be taught in Southwest, there's, or at Sardar Bennett, we all have at Arquette, we all have robust training programs and cultures and all that. We can teach you how to do a lot of things, but I want to know if you can work on a team, and if I can count on you. Those are the things that I'm looking for more than anything else.
Mr.
Linda?
Newmeyer, do you have any thoughts on that question?
I was going to let Linda go first.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I was just going to say real quick, I think of all the things that we ask prospective talent, and certainly as we think about the communications team, the last year's taught us a lot about resilience. And so, our team has been extraordinarily resilient. We've made all the pivots that our business and our profession needed us to make. I think coming out, you've had an experience in the last year too, and everything that you've had to do differently than you did before. And I would bring some of that to the forefront, so that as a candidate, and if you want to stand out, talk about your story of resilience over the last year.
That's a great answer.
I would say if you're not networking, you're not working.
Well, you all have been great. I know that I have learned a lot just being able to talk to you all. And so we're really appreciative that you all came to our advisory council meeting, and really just we're able to talk to all the students in the comm department. So thank you all so much, and we hope that you have a great rest of your day.